idea then is, all this will be shot, right? As they say. Now, I'm doing what I like doing most, that is talking to the camera, talking to you. You may have seen me do it once or twice before. What you don't normally see is the crew. You don't normally see the cameraman or the lighting man or the sound recordist or the producer and the producer's assistant. Today, they're not familiar to me as they normally are when I'm shooting a video, because this is a unique crew. It's a rather special crew. Special because they are all suffering in one way or the other from mental illness. Now, the reason they're doing this, the reason they've been training for the last month or so to become a cameraman and a soundman and a lighting engineer is because they want to tell you a story. It's a story of themselves, by themselves, for themselves. And I can tell you it's pretty extraordinary stuff.
I couldn't believe that when they said to me, well, you're suffering from manic depression. It was just so shocking. I thought, no, it can't be me, you know. It can't happen to me, it just happens to other people, not me.
And then one day, my mate was literally going to be away for the day, that I sort of come back and just took some tablets. And he found me and sort of semi-conscious, and they rushed me to hospital and pumped me out.
I again think it was emotions that I couldn't deal with through the breakup of my family and that sort of stuff, and it was just never dealt with. It was very strange, you know. I was just really alone. I was always alone, really, and going out to a foreign country, I thought I might get away from it all, but it just came with me.
I would have had the potential, I think, to go further with the abilities and the academic qualifications I had. But one of the symptoms of my depressive times was that I would tend to get angry and have bouts of anger at work, which wasn't obviously not looked on very well by my employer.
It really started in the second year of my A-levels. I began to get headaches and tiredness, and then I suddenly had a breakdown, which for me at the time was devastating, because I planned to go to university and study archaeology, and I felt vulnerable then. I felt that a barrier had come up between me and everyone else, and that it was almost like a stroke that I couldn't quite control.
How does mental illness begin? Haven't you asked that question yourself? Well, it can come suddenly out of the blue, just like a stroke, or it can creep up on you gradually, almost unnoticed. Our production team will try to explain to you what it's like from their own experiences, and they are being interviewed by people who are themselves fellow sufferers.
Yes, I was working in a school with handicapped children, and I got very down and depressed because it's quite a hard job to do. And I just couldn't get on with people. I kept hiding myself away from people, and it got so bad I couldn't go into a classroom with another adult, so I had to leave the job. And when I left the job, I got more down and depressed, so I had to see a psychiatrist, and I was admitted to Brookwood Hospital.
And do you remember how old you were at this point?
I was about 21.
About 21. It's interesting, you say you couldn't have another adult in the room with you. Were you able to get on with the children still?
Yes, I got on with the children, that was okay, but I couldn't get on with the other adults.
And could you describe your feelings, how you felt about them?
I felt scared of them, because all through my life I hadn't really got on with people that well, and I just felt scared of other people. I kept hiding myself away, and I didn't have any confidence to talk to them. It was awful. I used to hide in the toilet and hide in the cupboard when I see somebody coming towards me.
Yes, I remember when I was around about 12 or 13, that was when my problems began. I remember when I first went to secondary school, I remember feeling very ill at ease with the other people, the other children and teachers, and generally felt very lacking in confidence. And this was something that got worse as the years went on. Just felt generally very, very low in my confidence. Yes.
Did you have anyone to talk to about this?
Well, I was I remember being very, very shy, and I tended to keep it to myself. I actually thought that it was a normal process of growing up. So I thought, well, perhaps everybody's feeling like this, so I'll just let it happen. No.
I was living with my mum and I was engaged to get married. And one day my boyfriend phoned me up and said, sorry, I want to call off the engagement. And my mum couldn't cope with me being upset, so she phoned my doctor and they admitted me to Brookwood Hospital. And I was there for 4 days, and when I got out, I found out that my mum had a court order out. What to say?
To evict you?
Yeah, to evict me. And I was in the bed and breakfast hotel.
And what sort of life did you have in the bed and breakfast hotel, having been turned out of your own home?
It was very lonely, very isolated. I used to go out drinking every night, being picked up by men. And one night one of these men raped me. And I didn't think anything of it, but then I found out that I was pregnant, and I loved children. I wanted to keep the baby. But when I told my family and my doctor and my social worker, they all said, you must have a abortion, which I was forced into having. But I feel very guilty because I was the person that signed the consent form, and I feel that I murdered my own baby. Well, it's really upsetting.
And I actually decided myself to go and see a hypnotist to see if that would help me. And I remember going to see the hypnotist and telling him my problems. And after the therapy, I remember feeling completely different. All of a sudden, changing from feeling lacking of confidence to overwhelming confidence, and I've become a completely different person. I was now just felt so good about everything. And the following day I went into work and I was just sort of brimming over with confidence, and I was singing to myself and dancing around with a hoover, and people were just looking at me thinking, you know, she's so different, what's wrong, you know. And I remember one of the customers came in, and he was wearing shorts, and he was smiling at me, and I just sort of burst out in hysterical laughter. So I was on my knees in laughter, and unfortunately that cost me my job.
That cost you your job?
Yeah.
What was the reaction of your boss or the manager?
Well, she just brought me into her room and said, I'm sorry, Sonia, but you're fired. And of course I just laughed because it didn't really sink in what happened to me, and I just thought, oh, yeah, fair enough, you know. And I just remember my dad picked me up from there, and I was still laughing at this time, just thinking life was just one big joke. And I was taken into hospital the following day, still in hysterics, you know. So I'd really lost touch with reality at this point. I didn't know what was going on, and I never realised I was in a hospital. I actually thought that I was just visiting someone's big house with a lovely big garden, so it's all like an adventure to me. Yeah.
So could you describe something of your experience of hospital?
Well, when I'd actually settled down, when I wasn't hysterical, and the depression started to set in again, I remember just feeling so angry that I was in this place. I couldn't believe that it had happened to me. You know, I was just fuming. I wanted to get out, you know, and I was saying to the nurses, I just want to go home, you know. Why am I here? There's nothing wrong with me. I couldn't see that I had a problem, and I couldn't believe that when they said to me, well, you're suffering from manic depression, it was just so shocking. I thought, no, it can't be me, you know. It can't happen to me, it just happens to other people, not me.
There are times when mental illness is triggered off by drug or alcohol abuse.
I just remember a sort of normal childhood, normal teenage years, the usual fights with the parents that all teenagers have. Nothing unusual at all, really.
And how was your mother?
Well, unbeknown to me, she was drinking through most of my teenage years, but it was all being hidden by her, and my dad was helping her hide it as well, so we didn't know anything about it. We only found out after Dad died, and she sort of couldn't hide it anymore, basically.
And how old were you then?
I was being 25, I think, around then.
When your father died?
Yeah. About that, yeah.
And after school, what did you do?
I went to work for Beecham's, as it was called then, now SmithKline Beecham, of course, where I stayed for about 18 years, until I got made redundant.
Did the time come when the drinking caused a problem?
Yes, probably from when I was about 30. It was spiralling out of control by then. I was onto Scotch mainly. I'd still go out drinking beer with everyone else, but as soon as I got home, and then I'd drink spirits. Some of the time I was just about functioning, I'd just about get into work, but I wouldn't do much work while I was there. Basically, the alcohol was starting to run my life then. It was totally out of control.
Was it affecting your work?
Yes, I got a very bad appraisal one year, and they commented then that I ought to cut down my drinking and try a bit harder at work. What I actually did was tried a bit harder at work, but the drinking stayed where it was.
What went wrong was New Year's Eve 1998 into 99. I thought it was just purely the drugs, but I think I had my first massive psychotic episode at the Alexandra Palace in London on a whole evening of a big dance festival for New Year's Eve. And I thought I'd seen the future, and the future was going to be free.
Can you describe a little bit more about that, how it felt and what happened?
It was a band called New Order playing, and as they went into midnight, I looked around me, and everyone seemed to be in a trance, and I was in charge of everyone. So I spent the rest of the evening away from my friends and my girlfriend, going around telling everyone that from now on the world was going to be a free society. Luckily I didn't get beaten up or arrested, and when I came to my senses at about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, I had my girlfriend standing behind me keeping an eye on me. So she put me straight on that issue, and I said, well, I'm not going to do drugs anymore, but unfortunately I went back to them.
And then did something else happen that resulted in you going into hospital?
Yeah, the biggest episode was after a few more minor ones. I'd been working and not sleeping very well for about 3 or 4 nights, and I had to go to my sister's birthday party up at Docklands in London, and I'd got myself ready, got her presents in my bag, and was on the tube train, and I was building up more and more and more, getting more and more excitable, and I got out at Goodge Street, got to Centre Point at London, and all of a sudden I'd got it into my head, in this free society I still thought we were going to be living in, that a police car would give me a lift to my sister's birthday party. So proceeded to go up to the police officer who had his driver's door window open and ask him for a lift. He said no, and I got extremely angry and put my hand on the police car door to get into the back seat, and then all of a sudden he got on the radio, and then all hell let loose.
Were you aware that the car was a police car?
Yes, totally, but in my delusion state I thought I could get a lift for nothing.
So what happened after that?
Well, they were wrestling me, and there was about 10 policemen on me by this time, and they put the handcuffs on me and put me in the back of a police van, where I felt like a caged animal. It was so primitive, the feeling in my mind, that I thought I was a caged animal, and was screaming and shouting my head off. And the more I screamed and shouted, the tighter the handcuffs got, and the more the pain I was in, until a lady police officer in the front seat told me to shush. to the shush, and I quietened down and things became gradually better.
Do you remember what was going on in your mind at this point?
Yeah, I felt as though I had the secrets of the world in my head, and my brain was racing at 100 miles an hour, and I didn't know what was going to happen to me. I thought I might be killed.
If you mentioned cutting, could you describe what you did?
Yes, basically it was getting hold of a knife or sometimes a razor blade, and it was like an angry slashing at my wrist, or like that. And I'd end up with about 30 to 40 cuts on each arm, and they range right from the wrist up to the shoulder, basically. None of them were very deep, and basically I just looked for the blood to come out, really, and it didn't even bleed very much, mostly. But it certainly made me feel better after I'd done it at the time. I can't really describe how it was more. It's like a release somehow. A lot of built-up tension inside of me. Somehow I got the impression that something evil in me needed to come out, and it was like trying to cut that out. And afterwards I felt as though something had come out, and then of course the next day I'd feel really stupid because then my arm was sore and I think, what have I done now?
Do you know why you did this?
As I say, it just seemed anger somewhere along the line. There was a lot of anger involved in it. And there was just something inside of me I needed to get out by any means I could. If it meant me dying in the process, that was part for the course, really.
Mental illness affects people's lives at the deepest level, and that can extend to those closest to them, to their brothers, sisters, partners, and their parents, people who often become their carers.
I did take it very hard at the beginning, and it was a sort of grief, you know, sort of sick feeling in the stomach when you saw Sonia ill, when she was really ill, and even when she's dismissed from hospital and she comes home, you're constantly observing, and as soon as you see any sign that she might be on a downer again, it brings back that feeling and memories. And over the years, we've learned to cope with it. And I thought, well, there's no point in worrying yourself skinny about this. It's just something that's happened, and you've got to learn to live with it. And that's what we've done, really.
Mm.
As a mother?
Yeah, well, I'd sort of reiterate that. It is something you adjust to, and I mean, it's no big deal. I mean, you know, we get on fine. I mean, we wouldn't have any other daughter than Sonia, would we?
No.
Jill's son John developed schizophrenia while he was serving with the forces.
Like the suicide attempts were bad, but I can remember he'd overdosed and he'd been, you know, violently sick and that, and we'd had to get the mattress out of the room and remake the bed, and you know, my husband helped him to get all bathed down and all that sort of thing, got him back into bed, and while we were waiting for the doctor to come and put, you know, clean sheets and all that, and I went, like any mother does, went to put the sheet up, so it went up over his face for a minute and back down and ready to tuck in a bit, you know. And suddenly, out of all this bad bit of the suicide, there was our son again, a big smile on his face, and he said, "That was just like you used to do when I was a little boy." You know, and that is those little bits that you have to hang on to get you through the bad bits, I think, and not to miss those bits, I think.
Often, it's those nearest to them who have to carry on the work of helping recovery. And they are so often the ones who make that very first move to the teams of professionals in the health and social services.
Travis Jones, I mean, on the Saturday morning, which was emergencies only, and we went in, we knocked on the door because the main door to the surgery was closed. We knocked on the side door, And she came to the door and said, "Do you realise that Saturday mornings is for emergencies only?" And I said, "Well, this is an emergency," and she let us in. And we discussed what had happened to Sonia, and she was very good one. She sat there for half an hour or more talking to us about what had happened. And as I say, we were completely ignorant to those sort of conditions, weren't we?
Yeah, and actually Sonia was admitted to Brookwood, and the nursing staff there were really brilliant. There was one staff nurse in particular, I've forgotten his name, and he was very helpful. He explained sort of exactly sort of what would happen and what drugs they were giving her, and you know how long she'd likely to be in that sort of state. So you know it was that was helpful.
Treatment is the work of carers, the voluntary bodies, and a highly skilled professional team. So let two of our crew, Sonia and Gary, introduce some key figures in that process.
What things do you think are best used to get people better?
The treatment depends very much on having a good diagnosis, or as close as you can.
Yeah.
But what are the elements of treatment? First of all, I think people need to have a good assessment, and I think they need to feel that they've had a good assessment.
Yeah.
They're satisfied with the assessment that they've had, because then they're more likely to cooperate with any treatment.
Yeah.
I think there's always got to be an element of consistency in the treatment, but also of care in the treatment.
Yeah.
And then you apply the treatment. And the treatment might be, I think you're suffering from a major depressive illness, and you need some antidepressants to help you, but also during your illness you will need to be seen for regular appointments with somebody to check how you're doing.
Yeah.
And obviously if you're very severely depressed and suicidal, then that risk of suicide needs to be managed properly, so that you're not left intolerably alone and your risk increased. So there's the whole business of need for additional support, admission, and so on. Obviously, there is a need to spend enough time with a patient to make a good diagnostic assessment. And people who are very ill do need to be cared for consistently. But the care can be divided between psychiatrists, community psychiatric nurses, social workers, support workers, and psychologists, so that the psychiatrist himself isn't the only person who's going to be involved with the patients. But I think a certain amount of time is obviously required to look after people properly.
We have knowledge of psychiatry and medicine, which is useful for when we either have to give injections or to make mental state assessments, to visit people to monitor how they are progressing in their treatment. But we also have another variety of treatments that we can use to help people with their problems. We sometimes use cognitive therapy. Some of us have knowledge of psychodynamic processes. We do a lot of work liaising between agencies, social services, the GPs, and non-statutory agencies. We do quite a few home visits, but we also have people come to see us at the mental health team.
The most rewarding part of doing this job is when you see somebody that has moved on from a situation where they've been ill and in hospital, and they come out and you can assist them to move on into a much more empowered lifestyle, making decisions for themselves and leading an ordinary lifestyle, the same as everybody else.
All of us have got qualities and inner strengths. It's not always finding it. When you're on medication, when you're not well, you can always very often see the downside of things, but to actually see a positive and a good side to things, it takes time, and not everyone's got that time. I was able to be lucky enough and fortunate enough to get the help and have this around me that helped me, the bungalow, the garden, and everything else. So I was one of the lucky ones.
Yes, I think what helps me personally is being in an environment where I'm among people who understand and I'm able to work to best ability without pressure being put on me unduly. I had an experience of mental health problems for most of my life, but quite mild really. Starting when I was a child by going to special school, and then through adult life I've suffered from mild depression, anxiety attacks. Because of that, I found that in my late 20s I started to realise I was much happier among people with experience of mental health problems, because I understood them better and they understood me better. And in that social environment, I come to meet my wife, who is now my wife, Catherine, and she was attending the centre here at Godalming, and through that I got to know about the centre, and I got to know people at the centre. And later on, when I got made redundant from my previous job, I came here first as a volunteer, just doing the computer sessions, and after about a year I was offered the paid employment for 2 days a week.
It's affected me really deeply, really, this whole experience. I actually want to educate myself to the best I can, really. I want to become the best person that I can possibly be, and I actually want to put my energies into helping people, really.
I think you have hidden mechanisms inside you that help you get better. I remember it was really my friends, it was my family, it was the church coming to visit, it was little things when people would say, would you like to come out for a drive, or would you like to come for coffee? And it was amusing things as well, like radio programmes, and it was just a slow climb up a big hill really for me to get over the top.
And you mentioned with the radio the humour, and I think as we were discussing, you were mentioning your faith. Has that been a help?
I would have thought before my illness that getting something like a breakdown would actually I would actually lose my faith. In fact, strengthened it, and I felt that the one thing left inside me was my soul, and that was the thing that actually kept me alive.
One thing that for me has been very helpful is the help and support of my church. We've got a very understanding church environment, and my wife and I are also members of a home group, and we can talk and discuss issues that concern us in the home group.
Tim also regularly attends a service for people with mental health problems. It's led by the Reverend Martin Poole, who believes that religion and medicine can work effectively together.
There's a tremendous amount to be gained by seeking God's healing through prayer, through people praying for others, anointing maybe with oil and so on. I've seen many great things happen as a result of that. But I think it could be a tremendous mistake to suddenly say, well, that is the route and medication has nothing for me. I really feel